Welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Darin.
And I'm Jonny.
And today we'll be discussing In the Line of Fire, directed by Wolfgang Petersen, starring Clint Eastwood, Rene Russo, John Malkovich, John Mahoney, Fred Dalton Thompson, Gary Cole, bunch of great guys. Jonny, we're welcoming back one of my favorite guests, and we were talking off camera because it's been too long since we've had her on. She is a director, she is an actor, she is a blogger, she is a podcast extraordinaire, a woman extraordinaire. Want to welcome back to the cast, Jeannette Miller. How are you doing, my
Hi,
dear?
I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited.
Now, like I said, you were on for our night shift episode, which Jonny, what were we talking about? 4 years ago? Is that?
4 years. Yeah, it's been a long time.
I think it was one of the first because we did like a little bit of nostalgia cast, then we went on a break, and then we came back and started doing YouTube videos. So I think Night Shift was one of the first few that we actually had videos for.
Mm.
So that was a while ago. But like I said, that was such a fun conversation, Jeannette, and we've been talking on Twitter, and we've never
Oh,
lost
yeah,
touch with each other.
right.
But I'm always like, I need to get her back on, but it's just schedules and movies and stuff like that. So I'm glad that 4 years later we're finally able to meet up here. But let me play some catch up with it because it has been a while. Then COVID started, and you were heavy into theater. We were talking off camera, and you were talking to Cinema Recall with your Magnolia episode, where you were all set to do a production of all what was it? Patsy Cline, always Patsy Cline,
You
right?
got it. Yeah.
Where you were directing, you were going to play Patsy Cline. I think you only had like maybe two stars or two main actors. I think that's what you were saying.
Okay, yeah. So Always Patsy Cline is an amazing show. There's two actors and then a six-piece band.
Oh, right.
And basically, I produced it, directed, and played Patsy Cline. And then I know it doesn't sound like you're like, I hear this person's voice. No way. But trust me, I could do it. And I did it. And then my good friend Wendy played Louise. Louise, it's basically a one woman show with a musical guest because Louise chronicles through monologue her when she first hears Patsy Cline, and then they eventually become pen pals and become friends. And so it chronicles that relationship from the time she first hears her on the radio until Patsy Cline dies. And Patsy pops in and does about 22 songs. So
Mm.
it was a super fun show. We sold out. There was standing. I was just cramming people in there. We had six performances in my little town, and people were like, "When are we going to do that again? When are you going to do another show?" So it was very successful. I'm really, really proud of that show.
Good, awesome. Like again, it's always good to hear you succeeding
Yeah,
with your music or with your performing anything. I know with COVID you kind of took a hit, and then you started doing like audio dramas and things like that, right? After that happened.
yeah. When COVID, I was ready to. I was just finishing up the funding for a theater. We were going to build a theater, and it was a $4 million project. And then COVID came, and all the finance people like pulled out, which rightly so. Like they didn't know, nobody
Nobody
knew
knew.
what was going to happen. So we lost all our money. We didn't build the theater, and then, but I was still working with the community theater, and we just switched to Zoom. So then we started doing virtual theater,
Hmm.
and it really opened the doors for a lot of people who might not have auditioned for shows or might have not been cast for shows because of various reasons. So it really just opened the door for so many people to participate. We also had to do original work or public domain. So that opened up a lot of opportunities for people to find material or write material, which I did. I adapted some things, and I produced some of my own material there. So that was very exciting time because theater didn't die. We just adapted
Right.
and we kept on going.
The Zoom thing was really fun, and I think I watched a couple of those because you posted them. But it's theater, right? It's very
Yeah,
like it can be. You can present it however you want, and
yeah,
so it didn't feel like there's a difference, like obviously if you're going to do a movie like that, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's a bunch of movies though. Sorry, the only one that springs to mind is like Spider-Man No Way Home, where you can tell that they didn't have a lot of places they could go because they had to shoot like scenes in somebody's living room, like a comic book movie, things like that. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like that where in movies you notice that they're having to cut corners with stuff, because in theater, again, you could take all these different stances. You could be as kind of, artistic as you want, and it would still work as a theatrical experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I love that. Johnny, did you have any questions or any thoughts on what she was just talking? Being
Well, yeah,
obviously, we didn't talk about us being theater kids. So did you have any questions about that?
well, first of all, I want to say how cool that is that you're able to keep, it alive during during that time because,
Mm-hmm.
like you almost did that. And the fact you kept it alive is commendable, I think. And I watched a lot of comedians on Zoom and it was like wasn't the same because you can't get the comments that really come across when there's no audience, so you're
Yeah.
watching it, there's no laugh, that it dies and it fails. And I think the fact that you can do theater on Zoom is awesome.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's the energy isn't in there. You're not feeling that energy full of people. You're not experiencing that emotional reaction, whether you're laughing or crying or getting angry. You're missing that emotional connection through Zoom. And I mean, tell you, if you go back in the beginning of those videos that we put up, they're janky because they're just figuring out how to
Yeah.
get everybody on the screen. Um, People can't speak over each other. Like it's janky, and we just look like floating heads and the timing of things. And then eventually, they just get all these. They develop all these filters, and so then you can put scenery. And my show was the one of my shows was the first show to use black and white filters
Hmm.
because I needed it to be like a film noir,
Mhm.
or a stage noir, and it was just like there's so many things. I feel like the restrictions and movie people should do more of this. The smaller the budget or the more restrictions, it forces you to find creative ways to
Right.
do things. When you have these movies with tons of budget, like a high budget, then they're like, oh, we could just use this and this and this. And a lot of the heart and the meat and the potatoes gets diluted.
Yes.
And so you get away from the creative and the magic of movie. Like, what do we do? Oh, well, I guess our shark is broken. What do we do? Like, you figure it out.
Yes.
Right.
And that's how what happened with COVID and theater, we figured it out. We were
Well,
like,
creative
you can't
people.
kill us.
Yeah. It's some, art, you need to keep that alive, and you don't,
Yeah,
like, if you lose any of that, like your connection to Shakespeare, connection to theater, connection to film, anything like those things, or books,
yeah.
even, like, you lose something. There's a cultural kind of blind spot or something or a fog that kind of settles over, and you don't feel that, you feel empty. So the fact that, like, you and you see that all over the world, they're just trying things to make it work. And I think what helped too is the audience is kind of looking at it and go, yeah, this is all I can get right now, so I'm just going to eat it
Yeah,
up, you know what I mean? And they're
yeah,
understanding of it, which we'll keep coming back to this topic. I think audiences today, especially movie watchers, have a hard time with that. People want to, there's a very famous conversation between Siskel and Ebert about how Ebert's like, you've got to be able to be the person in the theater enjoying that. Don't be the person that's looking at everybody else and reacting to everybody else's. Be the person that's laughing at the jokes. Be the person that's gasping at the scares. You know, don't be afraid to admit that you're in that theater enjoying yourself. And I think
hmm,
a lot of times audiences today are above that, where they want to kind of see the seams. And Johnny and I have talked about this season, where we love seeing, oh, we love spot, that's a matte painting, or that's obviously a composite shot, or that's a practical effect. And audiences today will look at that and go, oh, that looks so fake. Like, look how prosthetic that, like that fake robot Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's so fake. But Johnny and I, and I'm betting you, will look at that and go, that's so cool. How did they do that and create an
yeah,
animatronic of Schwarzenegger?
yeah,
I don't understand how people just they can't enjoy movies. It's like they have to nitpick them, or treat them like a math problem. And I was glad to see that with theater, how it kept that going. Again, when you started doing that, I was like, that is so fun. And
Yeah.
Johnny and I, like being theater kids, we didn't, like I said, we didn't talk about this our last episode much, but we appreciate that when we hear you doing stuff like that and how creative you're being. Like Johnny and I light up, like we love
I
that
know.
stuff.
Now I'm in California. My parents, my kids are like, "Mom, you got to do it. You got to get back in. You got to get back in." So,
Yeah.
the pressure is on.
Yeah. And you're a creative, and everything that I've seen of you and everything you've talked about and everything I've listened of you from you says that, yeah, we need more of this woman's voice out there so we can keep that again.
Well, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Okay.
we need creatives. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We don't want people that are just sitting there like thumbing their nose at stuff. It's like and going back to your thoughts on, Jaws, if they had the money to make that shark work, I don't think it would have like overstayed its welcome, right?
Yeah.
You look at, I think they just showed Star Wars in a theater, like the original cut before all the
Oh,
CG stuff, and
so
people were
good.
like, "Look how fake and dumb this looks," and I'm like, "What?" I Johnny and I watched those special editions, and we're like, I know you can do this. Like when you made Star Wars in '77, I didn't know you could do all that stuff, and so that
Yeah.
lasts today. Where the something in '77 I look at, and I'm like, that still holds up because it's making strides to something. When you see CG, it's more like, oh, it's weird how something in '77 lasts in my mind, but something that was redone in '97 looks fake and doesn't have that same tangibility today because, like you said, money will buy you everything, but it doesn't buy you. I don't know if it buys you creativity as much.
I don't know if it buys you quality.
Yeah, that's the word.
And kind of feel bad for new film watchers because they're like handed a lot of things, and then like you say, when they watch something older and they're like, "Oh, that looks so fake," but we've been watching. We can go back and appreciate what it took to make that happen. And it's like you said, sometimes you get these people who are just nitpicking, or like they're snobby in a different way,
Yeah.
instead of understanding where these films start. I My boyfriend and I go to this place, Old Town Music Hall in El Segundo, and they have that giant Wurlitzer, and they play movies that are silent, and they also play newer movies. But when they do a silent film and they have the person playing the organ,
Hmm.
that person doesn't watch the movie in advance. They play the music as they're watching the film,
Wow.
and it is so amazing. It blows my mind every single time, because you're just like, they're just like responding and like staying with it. And it's amazing. And to me, it's like it's like better than seeing some of these newer movies that are just spoon feeding you and with dumping all the money and whatever.
Yeah.
You gotta, real people who really love movies, I feel like they need to, you know, go back in time and see where movies have gone and where they were, where they've been. Like, I remember Jurassic Park being blown out of my mind. I remember Toy Story being blown out of my mind. The Matrix, I saw it 3 times in one day.
Mm.
It blew my mind. I was like, I got to see this again.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of wonderment we're losing that wonderment.
And I've seen people watch Jurassic Park. I've seen people watch The Matrix, Gen Z or kids these days, as they say, right?
Yeah,
Where they aren't, that's an interesting kind of connection because and I'm amazed by that. If somebody hasn't seen the movie before and they're just reacting, like that's what you should do. You should feel a movie, right? You shouldn't be
yeah,
looking at how the images did that. You should
yeah,
feel what they're making you feel. And it's the
yeah,
same thing with I watched somebody watch Jurassic Park or The Matrix or Speed, and they're like above the material, and
yeah,
they don't feel that same wonder. And I'm like,
yeah.
what wonder do you feel then? Is it like the superhero saying, like, snarking at the camera? Is that wonder for you? You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Johnny, I'm rambling, but any thoughts on any of that stuff with like how we watch movies versus how, and we'll come back to this, but like, you have any thoughts?
Well, it is funny that they look at movies from the '90s and think how fake and how dumb it is. But I watch movies today and I go, look how fake and dumb this is.
Yeah.
So
And it's the same thing with the way people, it's just feelings. People just can't watch movies.
Mhm.
I don't understand. I don't understand any of that. But anyway, it's again, I really want you to, Jeanette, to dive back into that because we need like you just doing the theater stuff. We need stuff like that, like
I
doing
know. I
co-host.
gotta do it. That's my
So
passion. I
yeah,
gotta
that's
get
right.
to it.
So with in the line of fire, so what we're doing now, Janetta, we've already talked, but with our bucket list, Johnny and I decided we did our whole '90s season, and we love that so much because we grew up on '90s movies. That's where we cut our
Hmm.
teeth on. We wanted to come back to this in a way that wasn't just let's just do another '90s season. So I kind of came up with the idea of let's do movies because when we started, Jeanette, and I think I told you this on Night Shift, we were only doing movies that I hadn't seen in a while that aren't the lasting ones that aren't in my
Oh,
rotation. But then we started doing stuff like Princess Bride and Back to the Future, and we did for 100th episode we did Star Wars. And you know what? I resisted doing Star Wars, but I really needed that conversation. And John and I have talked about this because the discourse over Star Wars had gotten so bad
it's crazy.
that to go back and watch those original three, I was like, this is what made me fall in love with Star Wars in the first place. I needed
Hmm.
to have that connection again. So we just decided for our '90s stuff, let's just do movies that we've always wanted to talk about and get this on the record because we have just as much fun, if not more fun, talking about
Yeah.
movies that we love. So when we were talking, I think in December, you said when we started
Yeah.
planning this, like
Hmm.
I asked you, well, if you want to be on our '90s, what stuff would you do? And like, what was we were talking about it. Recount to me what happened in December. How did our conversation go?
Uh, you gave me. I think you gave me a few years, like a little time frame, like 92 to 95 or something. And so I was like scouring through there, and I had made a list of pot, and then I just started scratching them off, like whittling them down. And so I think I talked about the grift. I mentioned the grifters because oh God, that's such a good movie.
Yeah.
There's some wrong things about it, but so good. I think I talked about a foreign film called The Lover.
Hmm.
I think I talked. I think I mentioned just like a few things, and then I said it's too bad we can't talk about In the Line of Fire because it's probably been done a lot. And then you jumped on it. You're like, no, we have to talk about that. And I was like, cool, because
Yeah.
I'm weird. I had crushes on John Malkovich, uh, Omar Sharif. I think I've said that. I think I've given you my list of child girl crushes, and they're not your typical um, teen idol, obviously. They're like,
Omar Sharif is a stud. Don't sell Omar
I know
Sharif.
he's handsome. John Malkovich, but whatever. He's no teen idol. But
Yeah.
I think he's fab. Give me Dangerous Liaison. I'm over it. Like, ooh. So, but yeah, I think I can't remember some of the other ones, but
Yeah, In the Line of Fire is definitely one that I'd want to talk about because it was lasting memories of that.
yeah.
So for our bucket list season, was there a particular reason besides Malkovich and any crushes? Was there any other particular that you wanted to really talk about this movie? What are your memories about In the Line of Fire, like first seeing it, and why would this be the one that you want to talk about?
Well, I don't condone violence. I love violent movies, but I don't condone violence. I certainly don't think it's a good idea to try to assassinate a president. However, the libertarian in me is like, yeah, make that plastic gun, baby. Hide your bullets in that rabbit's foot. This is like ultimate creativity in ghost guns and how to get things past security. And I I do have problems with a couple of things, but all in all, I think it's a great story. I remember it just I rewatched it on Saturday night, and I was like, yeah, this is just it's everything I remember. I love the uh, relationship between Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich. I think they play really well together, and everybody else is like a stepping stone to get through this story. But the strongest scenes and the best parts are when Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich are playing against each other. Everybody else to me is just like a bridge to the next. moment when they're playing together. But I loved the story. I think the story is really good. Um, Strong acting from those two guys, and just that, yeah, that libertarian ghost gun. I love that. I'm surprised now we can 3D print. I mean, oops, we don't
Yeah, don't
3D print
condone that.
one.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, yeah.
All right. Johnny, what about you? What are your memories of In the Line of Fire? Like your first time seeing it, anything like that?
Well, first of all, when I made my list, this was one of the first ones I thought about. I knew for sure it had to be on there for my bucket list season. I love this movie. Now, here's the thing about this movie, though. Um, it's kind of slow in the beginning, and I mean, yes, it has that, it grabs your attention with that little scene with Tobin Bell and everything, and you kind of I get on board quick with that. But it kind of has this kind of slow, long, drawn out, midway through. And there's one scene in this movie that I look forward to every time I watch it. And it's that scene on the phone call back and forth when John Malkovich loses his temper
Yeah.
and slams the phone. I love that moment so much. I can't even tell you how many times, like, I imagine myself saying that to somebody. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I love that
Some
moment
damn
so much.
respect, right?
Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny, like, this scene makes the movie for me. If it wasn't for that scene, I wouldn't really care about it. But I wait for that moment as I'm watching the movie. I just get so excited for it. And then when I see it, I'm like, yep, it was worth it. It was worth sitting through all that kind of like long, drawn out stuff to get to that moment and that scene. And that it's just so good.
Yeah. I
So
think
good.
the thing that's cool about that, and again, it's in my notes, is when they're talking to each other, they're revealing their psychology to us, but they're also revealing their psychology to each other. It's more like conversations where they're giving their ideals back and forth. It's not just like and it's, it's very threatening and stuff like that. And they have that antagonistic, and yeah, they're very like Malkovich is very like serpentile is like the voice, like he's just very soft and very insinuating, and he's threatening. And when he loses his mind, loses his temper, it's because Horgan has figured him out, right? He's touched something in him, and that sets him off. And it's a great feel good moment because he's just been Leary's been needling at Horgan the whole time, and it's great to give some pushback. So yeah, and Johnny and Jeanette, you're right. Like their whole conversation that sets everything else in the movie works because that relationship is so strong, and I think that
Yeah.
that can't be overlooked. So I have a weird kind of first memory with this movie. Jeanette, when living in Utah, I guess it's everywhere. Like you can't be like 16 years old. I was 16 when this movie came out. You can't be 16 and walk into a theater and watch In the Line of Fire or something like that, or the next Tarantino movie because you're too young, right? So some movie theaters, and Johnny, you know this because we were able to get into some of these movies, but you could walk in and nobody cared. But sometimes, they wouldn't let you in. So BYU, Brigham Young University, used to play movies that were edited. And so you could go watch these R-rated movies, and they would cut out the language, they would cut out the sex, cut out the violence, but you could watch these movies and feel like, oh, I'm like a Mormon child, and I can't watch these movies, but I can go to BYU, and they're helping me, kind of feeding into so I can watch these movies and feel like I'm involved. So anyway, they had that availability. I would go to New York every summer and see movies, and I remember going to see Jurassic Park. I remember going to see Cliffhanger in a theater out there. Dave, I think, came out that same summer, so I saw that in the theater. There's some others that we'll kind of maybe come back to, but I didn't get a chance to see In the Line of Fire because I was in New York until about July. So with BYU, the theater that they would play them, they wouldn't get them until after they had been out of theaters for a bit. BYU or the theater company would get a hold of a print. So I remember sitting down, being nervous, 16 years old, just figuring out how to drive for the first time, driving into this college, area, sitting in the theater with all these other college kids. And Johnny, that scene what was funny about them editing stuff out is you could tell what they were saying. So when he says, "You have an appointment with my ass," but when he says that, they blanked it out, but the audience could tell what he was saying, and they died laughing. Not just because they could tell what the word was, but also because it was a funny moment. It's a great feel good moment where Eastwood is finally Horgan's getting back at Leary finally. So that's my first memory of the movie. But again, even in its edited form, it was still such a strong thriller aesthetic, and just did the relationship, like I said, between the two characters is great. It built very well. I think Wolfgang Petersen is we covered him for Never Ending Story before, but his action movies with Das Boot and Air Force One, A Perfect Storm even, which I don't enjoy, but it's still a tightly, you feel the movie in your bones kind of. But anyway, so that was my first experience with it. So Let me ask you though, Jeanette, what is your it's odd, but we just barely covered Clint Eastwood. Our first Clint Eastwood movie was Dirty Harry. It was during our
Oh,
70s Palooza
nice.
series. But that wasn't until episode, what, 120, 102 or something like that, Johnny? So it was weird. Just now we're getting to Clint Eastwood. So, but it was nice having that conversation. But Jeanette, what are your memories of Clint Eastwood? I mean, how do you look at it? Do you look at him as an icon, as one of our great actors? What are your feelings on him?
I do. I think I think he is an icon. He's been around for so long, and he does have a really good eye for the camera and setting scenes up when he's behind the camera, when he has anything to do with that. Um, he's always had sounds weird. He's always had the same face. Like he never really gets away from being Clint Eastwood. He never really gets away from being Dirty Harry, or I can't think of his character right now in Play Misty for Me. That's
Right.
one of my top favorites of Clint Eastwood, um he he still manages to endure and put out really good material. He always manages to show up and be compelling and be interesting on screen and be vulnerable and you really want to feel for this guy, in some of these movies, that he's got some really great moments. And I mean, I grew up with him if any which way but loose.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 55. I've been watching him a long time. So I've seen him at his, like, I don't know, just doing things, because you think, like, any which way but loose, any which way you can, and he's a boxer playing with an orangutan. His co-star is an orangutan, and Ruth Gordon, I think. And then so his career has just, the arc of his career is just incredible. And like, and The Mule was one of his last movies, right?
Hmm.
Um, like,
Last 5 years, something like that. Yeah.
yeah, that was really good. He did a really great job. And in this movie, he's what, in his 60s?
62. Yeah.
He does his own stunts in this movie.
Right.
I read somewhere he did his own stunts.
He definitely ran. Right.
He runs better than John Malkovich,
Yeah.
who said in an interview, I don't like running. I set my cigarettes down and ran for that 1.5 minutes, and that was it. Like, I'll never do this running thing business again. Like, he hates running. And that's how I know we're soulmates, because I don't like running either. But when I read that, I was like, that's why I love him. That's why.
Right.
But so I don't know if that answered your question about Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood. I feel like I've seen so many of his films that it's hard for me to really pinpoint anything in particular.
Yeah. He's just been around. He's been around
He's
for so long
he's
that he's,
he's just been around for so long.
yeah. It's weird when you have these actors who were around before you were even born or could grasp what movies even were. So I think Clint Eastwood has just been, he's been around as long as I've known movies. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Johnny, I know we talked about him during Dirty Harry, but were there any, especially with this movie, were there any thoughts you had on, or follow-up thoughts you had on Clint Eastwood as an actor, as a director, anything like that?
Well, I do agree with Jeanette. I think he's in his element in this kind of a role, and I think it's fun to watch him play these kind of roles because he's so good at them. Like, he's
Yeah.
great in the westerns, but he's really good as like an investigator or a cop or a Secret Service agent. I love him when he plays these kind of roles. I think his whisper and his tucking through his teeth and his scowl he has all the time, it works for this character, and that's why. And he's so good at it too. But I
Mhm.
also, like Jeanette, I love the newer movies like Gran Torino and The Mule and other things. I like these ones he's coming out with. I think he's great behind the camera as well. I mean, Mystic River. What else has he done that's like just blew me away when he was in his
Right.
directing mode?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like Clint Eastwood. I don't have any really problem with him as an actor. I think I know he was told he wouldn't make it as an actor, but I think he's really really good.
He's one of those guys. I don't think he has like terrific range. Like Malkovich has range. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? Eastwood is more kind of the Cary Grant or the Humphrey Bogart kind of school where they're more they have an aura about them and that's
Right.
what they play into. And yeah,
Yeah.
you can stretch it. And he like I think Bridges of Madison County was because watching him play romantically, and I know he'd done that kind of before, but like it was like, wow, he's really vulnerable. And he doesn't have any of the quirks that he usually does with his Dirty Harry characters. But
Hmm.
like I said, he doesn't have a ton of range, but he has a monologue in this movie where he's talking to Lily about that day on November 22nd when he
Yeah.
didn't act fast enough. And it's not something that I can empathize with, right? It's not like he's talking about how he lost his son and like he never communicates with him. And so I can empathize with that. He's talking about something completely different, but you get his emotion that he just
Hmm.
didn't understand why he didn't do his job and he felt human in that moment and he looks away almost from the camera like he's really feeling it. Like it's not just him doing those lines. He's really, broken up
Hmm.
because he failed. And I think he was actually based on a real guy. There was an actual Secret Service agent named Clint Hill who was actually there on November 22nd. And the story that he tells, he was actually on a 60 Minutes episode where he was recounting that. And he broke down this Clint Hill guy and just took all the blame for how Kennedy was killed. And he just says the same thing. Like he heard a shot, it sounded like a firecrackers, and he didn't react. The second bullet went off. He saw Kennedy raise his arms up and he jumped into action. But there's always something in this Hill agent's mind where he was like, if I just done something quicker, I maybe could have saved him. I could have done
Hmm.
something. So I don't know if Eastwood's tapping into that, but there's just, you sense that he's just really broken up about this. And it's
Yeah.
so great because it reminds you that yeah, he's a good squinter, you know what I mean, and he can stare you down.
Scowler.
But in that moment, it's like, oh wow, like this is why he's lasted. Just he can do these deep resonant things. John, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I thought that
Okay.
was well said.
Okay. And then he just released juror number two behind the camera. And like he's still making solid quality movies. He knows what he's doing. He's almost like what,
Yeah.
120 by right now, but he's still out there doing it. And
He's
I
up.
think I think within the line of fire, this was the first movie in 23 years where he was just an actor. He didn't serve as a director or a producer or a writer. He was just an
Mm.
actor. And maybe that's because I think A Perfect World came out later this year, which he also directed, which is also a great movie. But like I think maybe all his attention was there, his creativity. But again, it's great having him in here as kind of an icon.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I when you look at Unforgiven as kind of him saying like that's his goodbye
Yeah.
to the man with no name.
Oh God, so good.
This can be looked at, I think, as him saying goodbye to his Dirty Harry persona, even though he kind of leaned into it a little bit with Gran Torino, I would think. But
Yeah.
it's just interesting seeing him kind of. I think he's playing into his iconography, but that monologue also shows you that, oh, he's an icon, but he's an icon for a reason. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Agree.
So switching over to Malkovich, it's funny because I was looking at I think Malkovich in this is Leary. He fits into a category, and maybe this is just 90s stuff, but I'm looking at a list of these movies, these action films that have these villains
Hmm.
that kind of stole the movie. So just a quick list. I've got Die Hard and Quigley Down Under and Robin Hood Prince of Thieves that had Alan Rickman, and I think he kind of set the standard, maybe. You've got Cliffhanger came out the same year with John Lithgow doing the same kind of role. Speed, which we covered next year, Dennis Hopper. Die Hard with a Vengeance, Jeremy Irons. Waterworld again, Dennis Hopper. Air Force One with Gary Oldman. Malkovich slots into those movies. I don't like. I was looking at it and go, wow, that's a lot of really. Die Hard obviously was '88, but that's a lot of really good movies just in the '90s,
Yeah.
where I think these villains could be a genre unto themselves. Jeanette, any thoughts about that?
Yeah. It was a good time for villains. Even though it was clear that there was a template. Okay, this is how you're gonna speak. This is how you're going to pace. They're all kind of similar in a way. Um, I'm excited that John Malkovich made it as into this film as Larry because he wasn't the first choice. They were talking about Robert De Niro at one point in the beginning. There were other people, um, and so I was like, "Ugh." That would have been a totally different film. Like it's amazing how the movie gods say, "No, you're not going to do that. We're going to remove this person. He was doing a Bronx Tale, so no, We don't want him. And so the movie gods appeared and put Malkovich in there, and I think he fit the bill perfectly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's kind of a chameleon, right? And you can tell he's really leaning into it. Johnny, what do you think about? I think you texted me and you're like, "This is my favorite Malkovich performance." Am I wrong?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I got to ask Jeanette a question. You
Yeah.
mentioned that you have a crush, or you had a crush on Malcolm, or maybe still do. But what do you think about the close-up shot of his lips during that
Oh,
phone call? Is that something that turns you on?
oh my
We're
gosh.
getting up close and personal here in
That
NostalgiaCast.
is on my list of notes. I really, really loved that. I had forgotten about it. So when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, because they didn't want to reveal, I like Wolfgang's choice of introducing him with just his lips. And then later we get to see him his full face. It's kind of like the shark and the shark fin, or we're gonna introduce the villain, but we're not gonna show him to you right away. We're going to show you his mouth, and we're going to show you just hit the way he's delivering this manipulative, having this manipulative conversation. Um, because in the beginning, Malkovich is in control, and Eastwood is the one who's like PO'd every time. Hello, like, how do you know it's me?
Yeah.
Um, or whatever. And then he's like immediately annoyed by Malkovich, but Malkovich is never he never flusters. He's just like cat and mouse. And so later on, when the tables turn, when the turns table, uh, it's really cool. So I was excited when I saw his lips. I was like, yeah, I was like, I don't know. We don't need to get too deep into that.
I mentioned that because whenever I do see it, I'm always like, oh yeah. And you remember like the way he holds his mouth and the way he kind of like the kind of lips kind of sit, I guess his teeth in a way, and kind of the way he kind of like purses his lips. It's very John Malkovich-y, and he does it in all of his movies. And so you're
He
like,
does.
oh, you see it and you go, oh yeah, that's that's how he holds his mouth. It's kind of fun to see it up close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think this is one of his best movies, if not the best. I love him in Rounders. We talked about Rounders, Darin. I Even though the accent's kind of weird, I love that movie. But
Yeah.
again, when I was not again, but when I was younger, I saw Dangerous Liaisons, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really get it because I was so young. And I remember not really liking him, as maybe it's because I didn't like the character, but I didn't really like that performance per se. I haven't seen it for a while.
Mhm.
But when I think of John Malkovich, In the Line of Fire and Rounders are the two things that pop into my mind. And I think, man, what a great actor.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Agree.
I think it's interesting because he's so imposing and so threatening in this movie that when you
Yeah.
see him in real life, when you see him in a movie like Red, which I love him in Red, how playful he is in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the behind the scenes story is like the part where you mentioned it before, Eastwood is actually hanging off of that building. Like that's
Yeah.
actually, and you can tell, obviously they've got a harness on him, but the fact that he's doing that is like, wow, 62-year-old man, like good job. Like that's why
Yeah.
you're an icon, right? But even though this is Eastwood, you're facing off against Eastwood. When Malkovich reaches down and Eastwood's pointing the gun at him and he puts the gun in his mouth. From what I understand, that wasn't scripted. Like Malkovich
Yeah.
just did that. And Eastwood, from what Malkovich says, Eastwood started laughing because it was just a choice that he didn't realize he would. And then that's where you see Malkovich laugh. I love hearing that somebody that's so imposing in this movie like Malkovich can still like get giddy that he gave Eastwood like a thrill, right? I mean, I love that. It reminds me, and like we talked about with you doing the Magnolia episode for Cinema Recall, Jeanette. Philip
Mm-hmm.
Seymour Hoffman, there's a scene in there where Tom Cruise comes in and he's talking to Jason Robards. And I just know Philip Seymour Hoffman is one of the toughest, most intimidating actors because famously Meryl Streep said that during Doubt, he made her sweat during scenes because he was just pushing it and pushing her, Meryl Streep, actress of
Mm-hmm.
actresses, right, to go further than she was used to. So I just think of, and especially if you look at Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3, where he's a complete threat against Tom Cruise, the story that Philip Seymour Hoffman says when Cruise is there, and he's again the monologue. I think you were saying that he improvised that with some of his own, the idea of hitting the relationship he had with his father. Cruise did that, and
Hmm.
Hoffman tells a story where you can see him in the background. He's watching Cruise act, and he started the tears that come out of his eyes. Hoffman says those were real because he
Yeah.
didn't expect Cruise to go that far, and I love hearing that somebody like Philip Seymour Hoffman can be enthralled by another actor, right? Philip Seymour Hoffman, like you have no reason to be intimidated by anybody else. You're Philip Seymour
I
Hoffman, right?
know.
But the fact that they enjoy the craft and they're able to see he's not above that. It's the same thing with Malkovich here. I love that little smile that he gives. If that's true and Eastwood is laughing on camera, I just love that because Malkovich is like, I just made Clint Eastwood laugh. You know what I mean? I pushed him to doing something he wasn't expecting, and I love that. But again, I think Peterson, when they did those phone scenes, they actually did those. It wasn't like they usually do where it's Eastwood talking and then they would do Malkovich later. They shot them both, so that's actually they're interacting with each other on the other end. I don't know if they shot them in separate rooms, so they're actually talking, but I think that adds a lot to the authenticity of that
Hmm.
relationship. But I think Peterson says that he wanted him to just be insinuating and quiet, but then I want you to start yelling at this point, right? Just start yelling and like intimidating him. And then it's just like you said, I think it was an actorly thing, but at that moment, I really think that it's because Leary has realized, oh, he's figured something out about me, and I don't like
Hmm.
that, right? He's smarter than me. Something that I did didn't help. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I really liked it's that whole relationship. I really think that it just pays off like crazy. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just great. Any other follow up thoughts from either of you?
No, I think all of that just captures it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess with Wolfgang Petersen, I'm a big fan of his. I don't know if he has like a signature. I think the only signature is he can make a movie, right? He makes it work no matter what he's doing. It's like I think Das Boot is maybe his greatest movie because that's the submarine movie as far as I know, because it's just
Probably.
it gets you first of all, it gets you to root for guys with swastikas on their shoulder on their arms, right? It makes you empathize and feel for those guys on that
Yeah.
ship on that boat. And then, and again, everything submarine that's come after that kind of takes its cues from it. Like Neverending Story obviously is very iconic. Air Force One, which comes later, I really enjoy Air Force
I
One.
do too.
um uh Outbreak, I think he did with again Rene Russo, which is interesting because I think they also wanted Dustin Hoffman for at one point for the Eastwood role, and then something happened where he had a
Oh
falling
gosh.
out with the studio head and didn't want to do that. I can't imagine Dustin Hoffman hanging off the side of a building for whatever reason. But I just think that Wolfgang Petersen knows how to make a good thriller. He knows what's tense. He knows
Hmm.
how to keep things visually interesting. He knows how
Hmm.
to make things clear. He knows what emotions need to be shown. And yeah, every now and then, like I said, Perfect Storm is a weird experience because I don't like any of the characters in it. It's strange, but I can still feel the intensity of them being on that boat.
Hmm.
Jeanette, any thoughts on Wolfgang Petersen?
I agree. I think that he's really good at his craft. I think he has a good way of setting because this film in particular, the story is good, but like when I watch it, I'm there for the cat and mouse between Eastwood and Malkovich. A lot of everybody else is just getting me to the next, time with them.
Yeah,
But the way that he sets it up, it all works perfectly. Everybody's, playing their parts just exactly how they should. I really liked Air Force One. It's that tense. It's like it's building the intensity, and then it's like pulls back, and then he has a way of pacing so that you're um he does really a good job with that. So I don't have any bad things to say about him, as a director.
right,
I generally enjoy everything I see from
right.
him.
Johnny, what about you? Do you have a favorite Wolfgang Petersen movie?
If I had to pick, it'd probably be this one.
Yeah.
I do like Never-Ending Stories because I'm attached to that movie from my childhood. But
Right.
um, like you, I'm not a big fan of Perfect Storm either. It's okay, but it doesn't really. I don't have a need to watch it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I never really like followed him very closely. Like there are some directors that when they make a movie and you see that movie and you think, oh man, I gotta watch this guy's career. I gotta watch everything he does. I gotta follow him and study him. This guy, Wolfgang Petersen, I never really did that. I just kind of like, yeah, they're good movies, but like I don't really feel the need to go, deep dive into who he is and what he's done in the past and that kind of thing. But
Right.
I'm not saying he's bad at what he does, but I'm just saying there's not a real interest for me to follow him closely. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think maybe that's because I don't know if he has a personal touch or a personal stamp. All I know is when I see Wolfgang Petersen, I'm like, oh, okay, let's see what you got, man. Like I've enjoyed what you've done in the past, and let's see how you do. So some of the choices that he makes in here that are really cool, I really like, and I noticed it this time just watching the movie. There's a shot where Eastwood is talking to it's funny watching old movies and how they have computer screens that are so different than
Oh
our computer screens
gosh.
now. But when he's like, I need every permutation of this guy's face, they finally get a hold of Leary's face, they put it in the
Yeah.
computer, and it does the thing where it changes the shape, changes his nose, changes his hair. But then there's a symmetry later where Malkovich is becoming Carney character, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
shot on his face that does that. And it changes, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like that's a good artistic choice. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
really like that. Were there, and I bet there's a bunch of other things in here. I like there's some humanity to here. I like that Horgan gets a cold, and in other movies, when somebody gets a cold, it disappears. He has it in one scene, and in the next scene, it's gone. That cold lingers for quite a while, where he's
Yeah.
still recovering. And I thought that's so cool as a detail. Like that wouldn't normally be written to any kind of script. They wouldn't give you that idea. Um, were there? I'm looking at my other list, other stuff in here, but oh, with Malkovich too, I thought it was funny how they hid his face. And to me, I'm like, I know what Malkovich looks like. You don't have to hide his face from me, right? But I had so much history. But then I love that 32 minutes into the movie, it's like, bam, oh, there's his face. There wasn't any great reveal. It's just him on an airplane. And I
Yeah.
was like, is that a deliberate choice? But I thought, oh, are we just kind of getting a look at him becoming a different character? And so it's just like that, like bam. That I just thought that was an interesting choice. But Jeanette, were there any like particular points in this movie that you thought were cool, like from a directorial standpoint? Any creative choices?
I re well, I really liked how again I liked those composites that you're talking about. I thought that those were really cool choices to spend the money on. If you're going to spend money from your budget, having those types of things, uh, that really worked for me. Although when he is getting his disguise and he's trying on his rubber nose and everything, he's doing all of that, and then he finally is Carney. I'm like, it's John Malkovich with hair, like or without hair, whatever. I
Yeah.
was like, it still looks like him. Like I wrote disguise, not a disguise. Anyway, I mean, because we know it's him. It's like, is this his Clark Kent moment?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got glasses. Now we don't know who he is.
Right.
Um,
Because we know, yeah, we know who Malkovich is, so we're not
we know
fooled.
who Malkovich is, but it's like, are these Keystone Cops like, oh, no, that's not him. Nope, that's not him. Nope, I mean, he literally walks past people and they're just like going through the little fake pictures. Nope, nope. It's like, he's right in front of
Right.
you. I I liked the way they did the phone scenes, the way they edited the phone scenes, because I think it added to the tension. I thought those were good director's choices. Um, I don't know. This feels like a Malkovich thing to me when he's talking to the banker girl and he says, "You have a very pleasant way about you." After shutting her down, like, we need to hurry up. I got things to do. And then she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I talked too much. And then you can see it on his face. And then he says, you have a very pleasant way about you. And then she's like, what? He's like, you have a, but then she's like, oh, and then she looks away. And then his face totally changes. Like it hurt him
Yeah.
physically. He wanted to throw up or something. It hurt him physically to say. So there were some choices I think that Malkovich made, but and just the way that he Wolfgang like focused in on. I feel like he did a lot of close-ups for things.
Yeah.
He did a lot of close-ups for making the resin filling the resin pieces for the gun, um, all that, like the rabbit's foot. Like he really was like, here's a detail you're gonna need for later.
Right.
Here's a detail you're gonna need for later. He did that quite a few times, I feel, which wasn't bad for me, but it was almost like he does that. But that's the way the script was written too, because you knew that Al was not going to make it
Yeah.
from the very first scene in the movie.
Right.
Like he's after that first scene in the movie, Al's regretting it. I think I'm going to quit. Oh, you can't quit. No, I think I'm going to quit. I can't quit. You can't quit. And then he's like, okay, I've decided to quit. Well, can you just make it through today? And then what happens?
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, so Wolfgang, it is probably the script. So he's giving you, he's like spoon feeding you. Okay, this is good, and it's going to happen later. So I'm just telling you now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving this to you now. It's going to happen later. And lo and behold, everything happens later.
Right.
But let's see. I think that's kind of like, as far as directorial choices, I agree with you with the fever and making him sweaty and all of that stuff. I guess we needed to have those moments of levity, which will bring me to the window dressing. So when you're ready to talk about Rene, we'll get to that.
Okay. We'll definitely talk about that. I just want to mention, you talk close-ups. There are some shots, and yeah, we can talk about the relationship between Horrigan and Lily. But I like how Petersen is letting some shots and reactions play out. It's not just quick choppy stuff. You can actually see their faces reacting to each other when they're at the piano together, and he's giving her a look and they stare at each other, and she like breaks. You see it happen on her face. It's not just like cutting back 18 times, then her face is all of a sudden, you see it like go through the change and switch. I like that and the same thing with Malkovich. It's lingering on the face to let the performance like work.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't do that. But Johnny, I want to go into, I have some negatives. We all have some negatives, and I want to go into that. But were there any like directorial choices or creative stuff that happened in the movie that you did appreciate?
Well, I mean, one thing I think of when I think of this movie is the scene where Malkovich is on the sitting on the lake with the ducks, and he's putting them together. I think that's one of the best directed scenes in the movie. When I was younger and I first saw it, I didn't expect what happened to happen. But when you know it's there, you know it's coming. It's still kind of like, oh my gosh, these guys have no idea they're about to be killed.
Yeah.
So I think the tension in that scene, I think, plays really well, and I think it was really well directed.
Right. Just before I go, you're talking tension too, Johnny. I love the Ennio Morricone score, and I wonder if Petersen grabbed him because of his Morricone's relationship with Eastwood on the Dollars trilogy, or Two Mules for Sister Sarah, anything like that. I like that they brought that in, and so it was a nice kind of throwbacky score. And Morricone is one of the best composers out there, or was. But when it's at the end and Horrigan is figuring it out, and the music is telling you it's building and it's getting louder and it's speeding up, that Horrigan is he's getting that, he's gonna get the guy, like the cat and mouse is coming to an end. I like the tension that music builds and the editing, the way that fits. I thought that was really, really well done. But if there are some flaws with this movie, it's a very strongly made thriller. I could have done without, because I like the scene where they go into Leary's apartment for the first time and how it's very darkly lit and it's threatening. But later when they find his house in Arizona, it's the whole CIA thing. It's that whole scene is really awkwardly directed compared to how the rest of the movie is, how they crawl in through the window and then the guy's just there, and the Steve Railsback character like just opens the door and just walks in and says, hey, it's just weirdly done. The note that I had is like, did we really need the CIA connection? I don't know if you needed that he was an assassin. I just thought like he was a model maker. He went nuts. This is just where he went. But I do like the idea later when Malkovich, after he's killed Al, and he's talking on the phone, he's like, the irony between us is so thick. The same government that taught you to protect, taught me to kill. And then I saved your life, but you want to kill me. I was like, okay, I needed the CIA stuff for that. But just the way that the scene was directed was really awkward. It didn't really work for me. And then the thing with Al, I thought it was funny because, he's dead meat from the first time he shows up. But is that because we've seen so many buddy cop movies or cop movies where that happens? I like that he disappears because he's not going to go on the detail with Horrigan, right? He's just going to keep doing his thing like back at the office. But I like how they move away from Al, they come back to him for a little bit, and then they leave him again. And so it kind of helps you forget that, oh, this guy's dead meat. He's going to be the sacrificial lamb. But when they're having that conversation in the car, and he's finally, like Jeanette, you said, he's like, I'm going to quit. Can you just make it through tomorrow? And it's like, oh, you're dead. Like, just like that, right? But again, even though that you could see that coming, how Leary finishes him off, he doesn't just shoot him and let him die. He does a kill shot
Yeah.
to make sure that he's dead. And that's really just rubbing it in. So I don't know, all the things that I have flaws with, something else will make up for it later on. Where I'm like, okay, I can see what you were doing, even though it was kind of awkward getting there. Jeanette, let's go ahead and let's talk about the window dressing.
Oh, Lordy. I hate to do it. I love Rene Russo. I do. I think she's attractive. I think she's a good actress. She's had some, some decent films in her. I loved her in Nightcrawler. I think she was great.
She had the 90s were good to her. She had the Lethal Weapon movies.
She
She
had the
had
Lethal Weapons.
Ransom, Thomas Crown Affair, which like,
Yeah.
whoa. What was that, Johnny?
Get
The-
Shorty.
Get Shorty,
Yeah,
yes.
Shorty. The 90s were good to her. I'm sorry, Renee. If you ever hear this, you probably won't. But you were the window dressing in this film. You didn't need to be there. Or she could have been there, but they could have been a better fleshed out female character. It could have been. There didn't even need. What are my notes? The love story is totally unnecessary. It demeans her. It she could have had more value without it. It's a distraction. It makes her character weak as a professional. She's not his babysitter. And then she says the line to the nobody cop, and the line is, "What do we do now?" So there's a Reese Witherspoon speech, and she talks about that line. Just any movie, you can watch almost any movie, and then it doesn't matter how strong the female character is. At one point, she turns to the man and says, "What do we do now?" And it happens in this film, and it happens to a completely random nobody extra. She doesn't even say it to somebody who's billed in the film. There's all the chaos, and there's all the chaos after the shooting, and John Malkovich has run off with Clint Eastwood, and there's people running everywhere, and she turns to the cop next to her and says, "What do we do now?" And he's like, "I don't know," and he leaves. Or maybe he doesn't even say anything. I can't remember now. And I was so mad. I was, because I didn't know, I had forgotten. But once you hear that line, then you hear it everywhere. It jumps out at you like a neon sign. And I was like, why would she do that? Why would she do that? She was the lead in this detail. Why is she asking some cop guy, "What do we do now?" It's like, hello. And also, Clint Eastwood's charming. He's handsome for this old guy. But is he that charming? Was the ice cream that good? Sitting on the steps? Did she turn around because she was like, "Yeah, this guy, he's 62 and he thinks he's going to do this detail with us." Ha! Oh, if she turns around, that means she's interested. I'm just like, ew. The whole thing. She falls for him at the piano. Like, what? How thin of a female character, does this have to be that she's won over by ice cream and a piano song, and then he gets sick, and now she's got to babysit him, and then like, Frank, oh Frank, I'll put in a good word for you, Frank. Okay, and they have a good little makeout scene and they drop all their weapons on the floor. It's like, oh, the handcuffs fall and the guns fall and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
I think Naked Gun does the spoof of that,
Yeah.
where
Where
they,
Priscilla Presley is getting in the shower and she's just dropping like
yeah,
layer after layer.
yeah, all the layers and layers and layers. Or,
Yeah.
I think it's done a few times. Other movies have done that. They've like, spoofed that.
Yeah.
I hate to rip a woman's, but it's so thin.
Yeah.
It's so thin. They could have done something better with her. They could have given her better choices. They could have eliminated that line and just,
Yeah. Wouldn't have heard anything. Right.
she barely says anything in these meetings that she's supposed to be the lead agent for, but she barely makes any decisions. She barely does anything. She does have the 90s iconic makeup and iconic hair. Like in so many films,
Yeah.
it's that nude mauve lip, that nude lipstick. It's that just that I'm made up, but I don't look like I have makeup on.
Yeah.
From the 80s, the 80s went from like super makeup
Right. To au
with the
naturel. Right.
eyeliner and all the color of eyeshadow to like, we're not wearing makeup at all, but they're fully layered with makeup. And then the hair. And in the last scene, when they're in Frank's apartment, her hair is like in this. I was like, why is her hair so pointy? I wrote that, like, why is her hair so pointy?
Yeah.
But she was window dressing, and I hate it when women are window dressing when there's an opportunity. It's kind of like, why bother with the love interest when the love interest is totally unnecessary?
Right. 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 Personally, I think anything that works is because it's Rene Russo and she's strong enough to sell any of it, but the writing isn't really there. I like that they do bring up the words window dressing are in the movie, and
Yeah,
it's kind of addressing like the old fashionedness of the Horrigan character. But the thing is, like, I don't think he ever changes on that front. Yeah, he respects her. Maybe he's joking around, right? But he never really comes around to her point. Like she obviously comes around to him, right? Because
yeah.
you can see in her face, like, oh, she's falling in love with him. Is that her only role? And yeah, once that's kind of highlighted, you do start noticing that. Johnny, you wanted to talk about the chemistry or the lack of chemistry between
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, well, I don't mind the idea of there being a love interest side in the movie, in the story. I actually think that some of the lines are pretty clever. They're pretty good. It's
They
pretty
have some
well
good
Mhm.
banter. They have good
Oh
banter.
yeah, they have
balanced
good
back and forth.
banter. I'll give them that.
I feel like the chemistry is forced. Like they're trying so hard to make it feel like, we are like each other. There's some sexual tension here. And you don't really feel any of that. And you're like, really? There's nobody else you like better than Clint Eastwood? Of all these other guys, they're like, that's the guy you like the best? It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of, I don't believe it. Even
Right.
though it's well written and they act the best they can to make it work, but it just doesn't really work. And like you say, Darren, you don't really need it for this movie.
Yeah, it's. I think Jeanette, it's good that you brought this up. This needs to be addressed because ideals and the way and point of views and the like agency and stuff, it has changed. Like again, you talk about agency in the 80s with women in movies versus 90s. And yeah, Rene Russo has, she's Lauren in the Lethal Weapon movies, Thomas Crown Affair, she's very, very in charge. Obviously she breaks
Yeah.
down at the end, all that, but very strong character. Yeah, you don't. I agree with you, Johnny. It's like it seems forced. Like they needed to have this in here to fit that four quadrant kind of appeal for the movie. But there are some clever, banter. They have some clever back and forth. It's just I don't know if it's half an hour or 45 minutes after he's met her in the movie, he's already talking about giving up his job for her, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. But there's so many other stronger things that it is kind of sad. And that's good that you brought this up, that that's really a weak point, right? It's not as strong as it could be.
Well, I mean, they didn't have to have. They could have just had that banter, the flirtation, um, and it just not go anywhere.
Yeah.
They didn't have to have
Well,
the
they say
makeup
that
scene.
too. They say that too. They're like, maybe it doesn't go, maybe it won't go anywhere. I mean, they do
Yeah,
say that. It's
they
interesting.
don't have to, and it's like, this is she. It's so hard. I would imagine that the number of Secret Service, I think they do say the number of Secret Service agents, right? Window dressing again. They talk about it in the movie about she's a small fraction in this as a female in the Secret Service. And so she's going to take that opportunity to go out with a person within her, he's the one, like Johnny says, you're going to pick Clint Eastwood out of all of these other potential guys to have an in-office affair with. Like, it doesn't make any
You got Gary
sense.
Cole. Gary Cole's there, and Dylan McDermott.
Yeah.
Dylan McDermott is not very bright, though. I don't know. I wouldn't potentially put my job in jeopardy for him either. He is like I was like, how did you make it into the Secret Service? You're like crying every 5 minutes, dude. Come on.
Really quick, I always confuse Dylan McDermott and Dermot Mulrooney.
Yes.
Let's do that too.
True.
I always want to call him Dylan McDermott Mulrooney.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just and to be clear, like we talked about Night Shift. Gimme's and I came up through all the 80s movies. I don't have a problem with sexploitation. I don't have a problem with 80s porkies. I don't have a problem with any of that. I seen women on I have no problem with that. Because those movies are that way for a reason. But when you're talking about this storyline and this is her job, then I feel like her character is elevated in my mind. And so then when it gets diminished through what I see are poor choices, if this was a real life scenario, probably wouldn't have been made. That's when it gets like, come on, really?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. That's what bothers me. Not that, that's the part. Because give me what's his name, Sedaris movie any day,
Andy
where they
Sedaris,
just take showers for no reason. Now's a good time for a shower.
That's because those movies know what they are, right? And so they're going to lean into them. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me. We'll close out talking about this briefly. We mentioned it before. There's just something interesting going on with the way that movie watchers these days, the Gen Z or whatever, how they watch movies, and there's a real disconnect between how I watch movies and other people watch movies. When I'm watching these YouTube videos and reactors, they keep saying stuff like, "Oh, that's so '90s." I just watched a reaction to the Mission Impossible scene where Ethan Hunt uses the gum and blows up the aquarium, and there's a guy that gets the brunt of the explosion. He's thrown back, and somebody watching goes, "Oh, that's such a '90s thing." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, what does that mean?" And you see this all over the place. That's so '90s, or that's definitely from the '90s. And I don't know what that means. Maybe it's because I grew up in the '90s, but I really think it's because people are grokking. They're latching on to something that they've heard somebody else say or 15,000 other people say, and they're going on that. I don't know if you confront these people and you say, "What do you mean when you say it's so '90s? What are you talking about?" So just briefly, and then I wanted to wrap this into my final thoughts on the movie. Jeannette, like when I say that about '90s, what that's so '90s, other than Rene Russo's hair, I was watching the movie and I was like, with my wife, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm looking at her hair right now and I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a '90s haircut. Unless it's that, I don't know what you're talking about when you say, oh, look at the way he's acting or look at the way he's thrown out of a building. That's so '90s.
I'm with you. I think it's more the aesthetic. It I think that the way that they did her hair and the clothes, those really boxy pantsuits, like who is gonna run around in those? It just didn't seem, but it dates the makeup, the hair, the costuming. It dates the film. So even if you get a feel like some films, the way that it's obvious that they're older, but they may use costuming or things like that are more classic or neutral, so they kind of they can go over many more decades. Like you can't go wrong with jeans, a shirt, a t-shirt, and a blazer because everybody's been wearing that for over and over for decades,
Classic.
and
Yeah.
that could have fit. And also, it could have been probably easier for her to do her job, or just something that's a little bit more um, less fashionable, but and more functional. Like she
Right.
doesn't really seem to wear a lot of functional clothing. It's more this is the female character,
Right.
but so it could be that it just could be dated, like so
Hmm.
90s. I don't really know. I feel like that's more aesthetic and not content,
Hmm.
because I don't look at this film and go, oh, that's so 90s,
Yeah.
unless I'm looking at Rene Russo.
Right. And fashion choices that definitely can I just don't understand when you're talking about like a way somebody moves or somebody getting thrown out of a window. I'm like, I don't understand when you're saying that's so 90s.
No.
It's just something that people say. Johnny, just what do you have any thoughts on what does that mean? Like, what do you think that means when they're saying stuff like that?
Well, a lot of good movies came out in the 90s, and I would argue some of the best movies ever made came out in the 90s. So I think what they mean to say is when they say that's so 90s is that's a really good movie.
Yeah.
I like
Really well
that.
done.
I was just telling you, and I think we mentioned this before. It's like when they're in Lyria's apartment and it's like shadowy, and like again today they would just shoot that in an office building that's shot like very bright, and you can see the background. Just everything is in focus, and there's no, I don't know, there's no artistic sense to it. It doesn't give me a feel for like when you're in Lyria's apartment, you feel threatened. It's creepy. Like, and they're making you feel that. When people, again, when I'm watching reactors watch Speed and they're watching Keanu Reeves and Dennis Hopper fight on top of a train and they go, "Oh, that's such a 90s action scene." I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I really don't think you know what you're saying. You're just you're regurgitating something that somebody else, and you think you're being smart about it. When if I bet if I pressed you on what does that mean, they'd be like, well, it was in a 90s movie. And like that doesn't mean anything. Like, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But the thing is, Johnny, you really latched onto this movie when you're looking at 90s movies. And again, you had The Firm, you had Jurassic Park, you had The Fugitive, you had Cliffhanger, you had Sleepless in Seattle, you had a bunch of great, in just the summer of 93, you had a bunch of movies that people are still watching today, but
Mhm.
they're very classically done. This is a classically put together thriller where again you can piece out that Al's gonna die, like, but that's part of the fabric of the story that's being told. You know what I mean? It's like when I like the idea. It's very classically done how Horrigan's character is just nobody's listening to him, but he's making these mistakes that you would go, yeah, you shouldn't be out here. Like you did have a fever. You don't have a place for this, right? You are misspoken and like you're
Mhm.
overreacting to stuff. But and then Malkovich, obviously, again, after he kills Al and he gets on the phone, he's just rubbing salt in the wound. You know what I mean? And it gets you on Horrigan's side because it's funneling you down. It's beating him up to the point where I was like, you know what? I'd be happy if Frank just left and let the president be assassinated. So everybody could go, oh, he was right. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
because it's such a classically structured movie, Horrigan has a very clear goal in mind. He's going to stop this guy. Doesn't matter if he's a Democrat, doesn't matter if he's a Republican, doesn't matter what side he's on. My
Yeah.
job is to protect this president. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm hired for. And the fact that that's the goal that he accomplishes, it's very classically done. I don't know. I don't get a sense from as many movies today. And maybe I could watch a 2020s movie and go, oh, that's so 2020s. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
nothing is established. And your idea of a greatly put together action scene is in 2 minutes, 50 bajillion cuts, but every now and then there's a superhero that says something funny. Somebody go, oh, that's cinema, right? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So anyway, I think In the Line of Fire is a good example of a good, again, I'm going to say it, 90s thriller where, yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm going to watch a 90s movie, this is what I expect. They're very solidly done. Jeanette, do you have any, actually, let's go with Johnny first. Do you have any
Yeah.
final thoughts on the movie? And then we'll go to Jeanette.
Um, let's see. Well, we kind of covered everything. Just overall, I really enjoy watching this movie. I never get tired of it, and to me, that's a good sign. It's a good movie. Those are the kind of movies that make my lists. If it's something that I never get tired of watching.
Mhm.
So again, I watched it tonight, and I was like, yeah, this is this is my kind of movie.
Right.
Um, it has all elements. I really like it.
Well, again, even though you have parts that are recognizable, what makes this stand apart is the Malkovich Eastwood relationship.
Right.
That's something you're not going to find in maybe any other movie.
Right.
Jeanette, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts on In the Line of Fire. It is a movie, I will agree with you guys. It is a movie that I can watch over and over. I can pick up little things that I didn't maybe see the last time. And I love their relationship between Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich. I love that. I'm all here for it. I love John Malkovich's character is that everything, even though you know he's the villain, it's still a surprise. Even though you have seen it before, it's still a surprise when he goes to that banker girl's house. It's still a surprise with him sitting next to the lake. It's still a surprise when he takes out Al. It's still a surprise. Everything because when he is on screen, you are locked in to you're like hypnotized by that calm, soothing voice that's telling you all these things that are really rotten. Like he's manipulating Corgan. He's manipulating us too. And I'm like, man, I forgot about this. Man, I forgot. And I was right there. And so that is what I agree with Johnny. It's a movie I could watch over and over and still probably be surprised. Like, oh yeah, he's about to twist that girl's neck off. Oh yeah, he's about to, you know, and that gun is so loud. He should have made a silencer, but that gun is so loud.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why because I thought he got that second bullet off the floor, why he didn't shoot it twice. Because we know he shoots it twice at the lake.
Yeah.
But Clint Eastwood dives in front of the first, but Leary is still standing there. He can still pop one more off and shoot the president.
Right.
I don't know why he didn't do that. And so I was like, I never caught that before until this last time. And I was like, wait, what? He could have popped off 2 hits and one would have hit Corrigan, but one of them probably would have hit the president because he's just standing there with his arms up. But I think he was like shocked that maybe he jumped in front of it and actually took the bullet.
Yeah.
Caught him off guard. But I love this movie. Even with Rene Russo, I love Rene Russo. Don't get me wrong. Even with her, I just feel like I wanted more for her. But I love it. I think it's great, and I could watch it over and over and be
All right.
good.
Perfect. That's a good wrap
Yeah.
up. Well, Jen, I'm going to warn you, like we end every one of these episodes with a quote from a movie. So if you have a quote, like start thinking of that going through your head and we'll just have you quote it. But I wanted to thank you again while you're thinking for coming back on here. You've made such a good impression with us for Night Shift. When Johnny and I disconnected that call the first time, we are like, I really like that. She was really fun. And so
Aw.
it's just been a way to figure out, and I'm sorry it's taken 4 years to bring you back, but I really,
Okay.
like I said, I really want to see you flourish. I really want to see you keep going with those creative because you've
Thank
got a mind
you.
about you that I
Aw.
think is necessary. So,
You're so
and
sweet.
and hopefully we'll get you back on here before 4 years are up. You're definitely a guest we want to have back on again.
Yeah. The only one last thing, I'm sad that they didn't have a theme song because I would have sung it for you.
Yeah. Well, now that's one negative. Like, yeah, I don't like this movie. Never mind. I don't like this movie.
Forget it.
All right. Well, Jeanette, tell us how we can find you and tell us what you're up to and like how we can listen to that voice of yours and get that
I
creative spirit from you.
I still I'm on Instagram, but I don't really share a lot of personal stuff anymore. But once I get back into doing some more creative things, then I probably will. My blog's been quiet for the last few years since everything went down.
Yeah.
And but I still am on social media. I like to see what other people are doing and yeah, I was just super excited to get this invitation because I miss it so much, and I think you guys are really great, and I do listen to the episodes, and I say, I can't believe they're saying this about this. There's like no way to, no, you're wrong. Or, oh, yes, you're right on
Good.
the right on
Yeah.
the money. So I love what you guys are doing. I love your episodes. So, okay, well, I'm going to have to get back into the swing of things. You're
Okay.
pulling me back in.
We
It's
need
like
you.
the mafia and the PTA. You think you're out, you're not.
We need you. And again, just listen. Even if you listen to your episode on Franchise Detours, Rocky 3, I thought you brought a lot of real cool insight into Adrian's
Oh,
character
cool.
and to, Rocky's character. So I love those insights. I love that creativity. Johnny, did you have any thing special you wanted to say to her before we sign off?
Well, thanks for coming back on. And like your kids, get back into the theater, jump back in,
Yeah.
get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, I will.
We need you. Okay. Jeannette Miller, thank you so much. Keep going with that. We're going to love having you back on. I'm going to love any of the conversations we have. I look forward to those. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
But for NostalgiaCast, until next time, I am Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I know things about pigeons, Lily.
Everyone dies. Some die because they deserve to. Others die because they come from Minneapolis.
Oh, Lordy. How about you have a very pleasant way about you?
Nice.
Nice. All right. We'll see you next time, guys.